how he came dressed? You already know what's going to happen. You just came ready for the retirement.
Conor McGregor wannabe, huh?
I represent the new generation of mixed martial arts.
A question that has recently arisen is Ilia Topuria the new Conor McGregor? Multiple correlations allude to that possibility, which cannot be dismissed as mere coincidence. If history has taught us anything from the UFC, it is that history tends to repeat itself. El Matador is an undefeated finishing machine, with 13 of his 15 bouts ending with a fatality. At only 27 years old, he brutalized the greatest UFC featherweight of all time, Alexander Volkanovski, to win the UFC belt, and it looks like no one can stop him. Much like McGregor, Ilia Topuria is not keen to leave it to the judges' hands, and ever since 2020, he has been setting the UFC on fire, running through opposition without much resistance. As things are going, we might look at the next UFC double champ, who would probably expand his title aspiration in another weight class very soon. Let's take a deep dive at who Ilia Topuria is and explore how everything started for the first Spanish champion, who came from Georgia and started as a jiu-jitsu practitioner to later turn into a knockout artist. Let's revisit his most significant moments in the sport and ultimately uncover the parallels with the notorious and discuss how Ilia Topuria is becoming the Conor McGregor of the new generation. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please subscribe and be the force behind our push to 10,000 subscribers. Let's do this. Although we know Topuria as a Georgian fighter who also represents Spain, a little known fact about him is that he was born in Halle, Westphalen, Germany on January 21, 1997. His journey into martial arts began when he moved to Georgia at 7, where he started practicing Greco-Roman wrestling. At 15, Topuria moved to Alicante, Spain, where he and his brother sought a wrestling gym to keep growing as wrestlers. Instead, they discovered the Cement Club, which introduced them to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA. Having grown up in two distinct cultures, Topuria embraces his dual nationality and dreams of representing both Georgia and Spain in the UFC. His passion for MMA runs in the family, as his elder brother, Alexandre Topuria, is also a professional fighter. Known by the nickname El Cazador, Alexandre, aged 28, recently signed with the UFC, competing in the bantamweight division. Ilia Topuria made his MMA debut on April 4, 2015, against Francisco Javier Asprilla. The whole spectacle lasted 3.5 minutes as the Spanish-Georgian fighter pulled a slick triangle choke to end the fight convincingly. Topuria was unstoppable. He mainly fought in Spain, and by April 2018, 5 unlucky fellas had tasted the bitterness of defeat at the hands of El Matador. After defeating Micah Hamalainen with a guillotine choke in the first round, Ilia caught the attention of the international MMA community and was given a shot at the vacant Cage Warrior Bantamweight Championship. On June 16, 2018, Topuria was matched against Brian Bouland, a solid competitor with a 7-1 record prior to their match, coming off 2 brutal knockout victories. They call him the Matador, but only seconds into the fight, Ilia charged forward like a bull, taking the adversary down effortlessly. The Belgian fighter tried to bring the fight to the feet, but he was issued an infamous airline ticket with Georgian Airlines. After a few scrambles, Topuria wrapped his arms around Bouland's neck and went for the kill. The opponent tried to defend, but stood no chance as he got a pit bull bite on the throat. The Belgian fighter was left with the option to tap or nap, and he chose to be sent to sleep early that night. However, this victory was a bittersweet moment for the rising star. Although this bout was initially scheduled for the Cage Warriors Bantamweight title, Topuria missed weight at the weigh-ins and was ineligible to win the title. In 2019, El Matador signed with Brave Combat Federation, and for the first time, he was set to fight outside the European continent. He flew to Colombia to face Luis Gomez and made quick work of him in the first round, using a triangle straight armbar as his primary weapon of choice. Next on Topuria's kill list was the 6-1 Stephen Goncalves, a dangerous finisher from South Africa who was determined to end Ilia's undefeated run. In the blink of an eye, the Georgian fighter was reminded why playing Russian roulette on the feet is a dangerous game, so he quickly switched to his natural instincts and scored a takedown. To be kicked in the head like that and still be able to execute a powerful takedown only speaks how tough and resilient Topuria is. Stephen tried to escape and fell right into Ilia's trap, who tried cutting his oxygen supplies. The South African was a hard nut to crack and somehow escaped from that position, initiating a battle on the feet. But in no time, he was put on his butt again. Taking Goncalves down was easy, but controlling him on the canvas was not an easy feat. Topuria understood that and accepted the fight on the enemy's territory, the striking department. This was the moment when Ilia switched from a submission specialist to a boxer. He steered the victim into an ambush and pulled the trigger, unleashing a nuclear right that sent the South African to the land of darkness. By viciously knocking out the adversary and issuing one-way tickets straight to the Dead Sea to every other opponent he faced, the Spanish-Georgian athlete caught the attention of the big league, and when the UFC called, there were no second thoughts. On October 11, 2020, Ilia Topuria was welcomed to the organization by Youssef Zalal, who was 3-0 in the UFC. Topuria served as a replacement for Zalal's initial opponent, Sungwoon Choi, and took the fight on short notice, a move that requires courage. Fighting in the UFC is the ultimate goal for every MMA athlete, but as they say, the first impression can be crucial, and here was Ilia Topuria making his promotional debut without a full camp of preparation. The uncharted waters of the UFC can be a shipwreck for many, especially if you accept a bout without proper training, but try telling that to El Matador. He was eager to make a statement, and nobody could stop him from doing it. Early in the first round, Topuria showcased the beauty of Greco-Roman wrestling, which was an overture to a dominant first round. The Georgian fighter persistently demanded a tap, but Zalal proved to be a high mountain to climb. In the next round, Ilia scored another easy takedown and had a few submission attempts, but without success. Topuria's takedowns worked wonders again in the third, but the lack of preparation played a significant role in his ability to seal the deal legally with a submission. Nevertheless, after ragdolling the opponent for 3 rounds, the referee had no headache deciding who was the absolute winner. Youssef Zalal, on the other hand, can tell his grandchildren how he was the first opponent to survive Ilia's onslaught and go the distance against the Matador. The next athlete who got in the way was Damon Jackson, a submission maestro who was not keen to leaving it to the judges' hands. The American held an impressive record of 18-3, coming off a flawless performance against Mirsad Bektik, which earned him the Performance of the Night bonus. By locking Topuria against such a battle-tested vet with tons of crafty submissions in his sleeves, it appears as if the UFC was throwing the young Georgian to the wolves. Little did anyone know that Ilia was the type of person you throw to the wolves, and he would return leading the pack. Ilia knew that going on the ground with Damon could be quite risky, so he decided to switch to his boxing and demonstrate his versatility as a fighter. It took a couple of minutes for the American to realize what he got himself into. Topuria closed the distance and landed the mother of all bombs, cutting Damon's brakes off instantly. The referee intervened to save him from spending the night in the emergency room, and poor Damon wasn't sure what had just happened. The jiu-jitsu fighter was slowly turning into a deadly striker, becoming one of the most well-rounded fighters on the roster, and being only 23 years old at this point, he was only getting started. It was around this time when the young Georgian caught the attention of the UFC community, when he was matched against the submission maestro Ryan Hall, a high-level BJJ black belt who possesses the nastiest leg lock submissions in the sport. The American made waves on the Ultimate Fighter 22 show featuring Conor McGregor and Uriah Faber as coaches. His first 2 opponents felt the effectiveness of jiu-jitsu and were forced to tap so that they could walk again. Ever since the show, everyone knew that going on the ground with Ryan Hall was the same as trying to wrestle a crocodile in a river. Sure enough, Topuria did his homework, and for the first time in his career, he lived up to his nickname, El Matador, as he implemented brilliant gameplay. Whenever Ryan Hall went for the legs, Topuria avoided being caught in a submission and blasted the opponent with punishing blows as a form of retaliation. After one such move, the Spanish-Georgian fighter ended this weirdness by unloading a heavy cargo of bombs, leaving the referee with no other option. Ryan Hall was 8-1 before locking horns with the Georgian, and Ilia treated him as if he had never fought before. Let's not forget that Hall managed to beat BJ Penn with a heel hook effortlessly, so you can imagine the level of BJJ he possesses. Yet when Ilia started unloading his rockets, Hall's black belt got bleached in an instant. Up to this point, Ilia had been running through opponents like a tank over a car, smashing his way to the top without much resistance. However, the first time his chin got really tested, and the Georgian found himself in real trouble, was in his upcoming bout. On March 19, 2022, Ilia Topuria set foot on English soil to face Jai Herbert, a dangerous striker, with 9 of his 12 victories coming by way of knockout. This fight also marked Ilia's lightweight debut, and his main problem would have been dealing with Herbert's height and reach advantage. Instead of taking the fight to his own domain, El Matador decided to go toe-to-toe with the Englishman, creating dynamites in the center of the octagon. And just like that, Herbert crow-copped Ilia early in the first, almost knocking him out cold. The Georgian powerhouse realized that he was no longer the uncontested leader of the striking hierarchy. That kick could have knocked out anyone but Ilia Topuria, who urgently switched to his wrestling to regain his composure. And before you knew it, he was subjecting the foe to a gravity shock treatment. The fight was back to the feet, and the Englishman started tagging El Matador with shots, who was already wobbled from the previous big shot. Herbert unleashed a torpedo through the knee, catching Ilia clean, but the Georgian fighter didn't even flinch. The script in the second round differed from the first, as Ilia Topuria was determined to show the opposition how it's done. He stalked the opponent around the cage like Jason Voorhees and launched ballistic missiles, sending the Englishman straight to La La Land. This was Topuria's first performance of the night bonus, but sure as heck, not the last. Ilia Topuria's heart, strong chin, and warrior spirit were on full display. He proved to the world that he can take a strike and weather the storm to emerge victorious in the end. It's not always about how dominant you are, it's about how hard you can get hit and keep coming back. The Spanish-Georgian fighter was active like a squirrel on a double espresso. He was back to the octagon on December 10, 2022, to lock horns with Bryce Mitchell, an undefeated 15-0 prospect and high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, coming off a big victory over Edson Barbosa. The anticipation was high, because when you lock two undefeated prospects in the octagon, someone's zero's gotta go. The first round was very competitive, but Ilia had a clear advantage in the artillery exchange on the feet. The American was discouraged from keeping the fight standing, so he went for a takedown. However, taking Ilia down and submitting him was as difficult as trying to invade Russia in winter. The Georgian fighter gained momentum in the second and landed a textbook boxing combo that dropped the opposition to the canvas. Bryce weathered the storm and returned to his feet, but was too tired to beat the clock, so he went for a takedown, where he was quickly reversed. Topuria started the finishing sequence by pounding several nails before setting the arm triangle choke. When the choke was locked, it was only a matter of time, and just like that, the high-level black belt was forced to tap and surrender to the superior fighter. Bryce Mitchell, who had 9 submission victories prior to this fight, was beaten in his own game and defeated for the first time in his professional career. On June 24, 2023, Ilia Topuria stepped back into the octagon, this time against the battle-tested vet Josh Emmett, known for his knockout power. Emmett has taken down fighters like Ricardo Lamas and Michael Johnson with a single punch, showing just how dangerous he was. At the start, Topuria approached the fight cautiously but aggressively, mindful of Emmett's power. He unleashed a barrage of heavy strikes in the second round, culminating in a powerful combo that dropped Josh to the canvas. Ilia continued the assault, landing another massive right hand before the round ended, sending Emmett down again. In the third round, Josh tried to be more aggressive, but Topuria countered with jabs, leg kicks, and boxing combos, leaving Emmett's face battered and bruised. The fourth round saw Ilia dominating with striking combos, landing a big left that dropped the American. He followed up with ground and pound strikes before dropping Emmett once more with a heavy blow. The round ended with Topuria in a dominant position. Despite the punishment, Josh refused to give up. He went after El Matador aggressively in the fifth round, but Ilia kept his composure, outmatching him in striking exchanges and even taking him down halfway through the round. The fight was completely one-sided, with Topuria dominating every aspect. The Spanish-Georgian fighter made a statement and showed the world that he was ready to fight for the title. This was Ilia's 6th UFC win in a row, including 5 one-way tickets to oblivion, and sure enough, he was ready for the title. However, winning the title would be a tough challenge, with the featherweight GOAT, Alexander Volkanovski, standing atop that mountain. And this is where the initial whispers of Ilia Topuria stepping into the role of the new Conor McGregor began. Topuria has mirrored McGregor's rise in the featherweight division to some extent, and it's not hard to see why. Almost 10 years ago, McGregor challenged the legendary Jose Aldo for the featherweight title. Leading up to their bout, the parallels between their dynamics and Topuria's situation with Volkanovski were striking. Like Volkanovski, Aldo was the dominant champion, widely regarded as the best pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He was highly respected and seemed unbeatable at 145 pounds. Adding to the similarities, Aldo was on an impressive 18-fight winning streak, with his last loss occurring years earlier in a heavier weight class, lightweight. Apart from his losses to Islam Makhachev at lightweight, Volkanovski had a similar record. He boasts 23 consecutive wins at featherweight and, except for a prior loss in his early career at a heavier weight class, welterweight, has been undefeated at featherweight, much like Aldo was at this time. To add to these similarities, both Conor and Ilia were on 14-fight winning streaks when they challenged the champions. And if you think that parallel was shocking, how about the fact that both McGregor and Topuria were 27 years old when they fought for those belts? For Topuria, a win would have been a career-defining moment akin to McGregor's victory over Aldo. Like McGregor, Topuria has been vocal about his belief in his superiority over the rest of the division, which has not endeared him to his fellow 145-pounders. However, unlike McGregor, his trash talk has not crossed into personal attacks or abuse, similar to McGregor's earlier days as a featherweight. Both McGregor and Topuria have positioned themselves as the future of MMA, both in terms of skill and promotion. They also served as prominent figures for their respective European countries, bringing them into the MMA spotlight. McGregor famously put Ireland on the MMA map by becoming its first UFC champion. Topuria was aiming to do the same for Georgia and Spain. If he could have backed up his trash talk by decisively defeating Volkanovski, much like Gregor did against Aldo, it could have meant a career-defining moment. In addition, McGregor famously took Aldo's belt during a press conference, provoking the Brazilian with the words, "Come and get it." Topuria attempted a similar stunt with Volkanovski's belt, although the Australian didn't seem fazed by it. To add to the drama, just like McGregor stole Aldo's belt at the press conference, which erupted the arena, Topuria did precisely the same thing, although the audience wasn't as entertained as with Conor and Aldo. Moreover, both McGregor and Topuria exude a certain aura, with Topuria even predicting a finish and the round. Even before the fight, Ilia already claimed a record of 15-0 on his Instagram bio, envisioning himself as a UFC champion and dictating the terms of his future title reign. Initially seen as arrogance, if Topuria could deliver on his promises and become to the Spanish fans what McGregor is to the Irish, it was obvious that he would become the next big star that the UFC is always searching for to lead the new generation. With that background set, let's delve into how the fight played out. The Australian fighter of Macedonian origin had been undefeated at featherweight for 10 years, defeating elites like Max Holloway, Jose Aldo, Yair Rodriguez, and Brian Ortega. While most of his bouts were one-sided, he had never faced a young, hungry competitor like Ilia Topuria. The two were finally matched on February 17, 2024, with the UFC Gold on the line. The first round was close, and Alex implemented an intelligent strategy, tagging the Georgian with kicks and keeping him at bay. However, the crowning moment arrived in the second. For some reason, Volkanovski decided to box with Topuria in the second, and once again, Ilia showed the world why his striking was as deadly as a .44 Magnum shot. He closed the distance and unleashed the overhand bomb, sending the champ straight to the Shadow Realm. This was a sad moment to watch when a lovable champion like Volkanovski had to go down that way. But on the other hand, it is the overture to a potential long championship reign for a new, undefeated prospect who boxes like a sniper and squeezes like a python. The UFC featherweight champion has a new sheriff in town, and his name is Ilia Topuria. So the final question that comes to mind is Ilia Topuria the new Conor McGregor? First of all, Conor McGregor is a true unicorn of the sport who attracted millions of new fans, many of whom had never heard of MMA before. Although there are many similarities between Conor and Ilia, such as their ability to finish fights and predict outcomes, one thing that sets McGregor apart from Topuria on a larger scale is his charisma and entertainment value on the microphone. Ilia Topuria is not as entertaining when he speaks, and despite his efforts, the language barrier prevents him from becoming a true villain. However, he can compensate for this with something else, being a far more dominant champion than McGregor. If he continues to win and defend his title in spectacular fashion, qualities like being entertaining on the microphone will become less important. Therefore, the only way for Ilia Topuria to become the new McGregor is to continue delivering stunning finishes and strive for a second belt. As previously mentioned, there are numerous parallels between their ascents to the top and championship reigns, raising the question, will these similarities continue? Just imagine the spectacle of a super fight between Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev. If anyone can neutralize Makhachev's wrestling and compete with him standing, it's Ilia Topuria. The challenge for him at featherweight seems minimal after his performance against Volkanovski. Max Holloway is perhaps the only fighter who could truly test Topuria in this division, given his exceptional striking and endurance. If the UFC matches Ilia against Holloway and Topuria emerges victorious, they might consider booking a super fight between Islam and Topuria. If the Georgian challenges the Russian for the lightweight belt and defeats him, then the MMA world will almost certainly have its new Conor McGregor. Thank you for tuning in, fight fans. We can't wait to see you in the next one.